Welcome back, everyone. And today we're gonna deal with some shaders. We're gonna work a lot with shaders today and textures. And I want a big shout out to Minions Art because this one tutorial image thing that he created. If you haven't heard about this person, he or she, I'm not sure. Um, but he creates these little GIF files that kind of quickly illustrate a couple effects that you can do in Unity. And this one finally taught me something I've been wanting to figure out for a long time is how to use distortion because I've never been able to find a good tutorial on how to use distortion and to create fire. And this one GIF really finally kind of illustrated to me the concept behind it. You have moving noise, you apply distortion, and it actually shows you what the texture is. So I'm like, okay, now I know what I'm looking for, and a gradient, and then more gradients. And he kind of gives you some ideas too. And he also gave you like his Unity shader, how these things work. And another person I want to shout is to David. This one also helped me out. Like he posted as a reply to Minions Art how he does it, which is similar but a little different. Using them both together, I was finally able to understand how this works. Like I found some tutorials online in the past. It was just hard to understand and follow, and they never give you the textures. They just explain to you what you have to do. So it's just I've read that you use noise, and then you just apply distortion to it, and then just put a gradient on it, and then there's your fire. That doesn't help. But this, like I said, this GIF file, animating and a little bit of text was what I needed to finally visually understand what's going on. So I know what to look for, how to build it, and what are some of the little bits and pieces I need to make it work. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to actually try to recreate something similar because I couldn't really duplicate his shader exactly. It's just because it's Unity, and with Fungi, we're building everything from scratch. So we have to use what we can, what we have, and build what pieces we need to get it there. So yeah, so some of the things. Well, first we're gonna need is a noise texture, and we're gonna need a distortion texture, right? So I got us this noise texture. I think we're gonna play with. We're gonna use this one. We're gonna use this noise texture, and I found a distortion. This one's called water distortion. So this file or this image is used to create distortions in water. It's hard to find good distortion textures. I just don't know what the right keywords for it is. So I couldn't find a distortion file that he's using or the distortion texture. And by the way, if you he makes tons and tons of these animated GIF files showing you tons of effects, like amazing effects. And if you go to his Patreon and pay $10, you get access to all the files of every single GIF file. And he has like boatloads of them. He makes them once a week. So at some point, I'm definitely going to pay at least the $30 fee because this person's awesome giving out this much information on how to do visual effects. Because there's really not that many people actually doing this, showing visual effects and tutorials on how to do all these little amazing things. So definitely, if you're really interested in creating visuals, definitely check out this person. And if you pay to his Patreon, you will get the source files to these GIF files. So you can get the textures and all the source code. And I think he even explains it even further, text or videos, I'm not sure. But yeah. So we're gonna build this ourselves, but definitely if you want to learn more about visual programming, this like visual effects programming, this is the person to definitely check out. And I'll put links in the description and everything else. So like I said, I don't have access to his distortion texture, so I managed to find one. And in case you don't know what a distortion texture is, and usually you see them as like these pretty little colors. Now the thing is, the magic behind distortion textures is that in every image has 4 channels: R, G, B, and A, red, green, blue, and alpha. And these distortion textures actually is a way to pack in 4 different noises within a single image. So every channel can store one noise image. So like ideally I can put this noise and this noise in here and just stick it in an R and GB channel. The RG channel. One goes in R, one goes to G, and then when I sample it, I will automatically get both images at one go instead of loading in 2 textures and then sampling 2 textures. This way, if I sample 1 texture, I can get up to 4 textures in one go. This works really well with noise because noise is basically a black and white textures. So that's all noise is just between values of between 0 and 1 or -1 and 1. But in images, they exist as 0 and 1 or 0 to 225. So you don't have to normalize it, but just keep in mind that's what a distortion texture is. It's just noise like packed in based on the color channels. And I don't know which noise is in which channel for this file, so I just randomly use RNG for the noise. So, but it's still, I managed to recreate the effect just fine. So we're going to use that as our base shader or base texture to create our fire. All right, so I have a new setup. So this way we can quickly go back and forth and view our output and our code. So here's a quick setup we got here. We're loading in 2 files. We got our texture, distortion, and our noise. We're doing something very simple. I'm just putting a quad in, and we're going to use that quad to do the rendering. That's about it. And we're gonna have a new file called shader._fire. I just put it in the root, not inside the shaders folder. And it's the usual suspects. Where we set up our 2 uniforms that bring our textures. That'll go into the fragment shader. Everything is pretty much the same. And we just set up our materials. We have blending turned on, so we can kind of fade into the background. And yeah. So first thing we got is our vertex shader, right? Very simple. So we're going to pass in 2 UV coordinates. We're going to pass in the straight up UV coordinates, and we're going to animate the UV coordinates. Right now I have it commented out, but because I don't want to show it animating quite yet. So we're going to have to do 2 versions of UVs. So that's why one's called plain and one's called animation. So one that animates. So now if we move down to our fragment shader, we got our 2 UVs that are coming in, and got the uniforms for our 2 textures that we're loading in. We got some functions. I've used this guy before. In case you're new, this guy has an amazing palette function. Very simple function, but creates these really funky palettes of color. So I'm going to use that today to play around. I'll put this also in the link. So we're going to be doing some of that. We're going to be doing something called color ramping. I'll explain that later. I have 2 versions of it. That's right. But I diverse. Okay, so let's really get right into it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our animated UV values. But this one is not animating yet. So we're just going to sample our noise texture, and we're going to draw it right onto the screen. So if I go here, I click refresh, here we go. There's our texture, and here's a nice little world I put together to do these texture renderings. So that's number 1. So first step, let's make it animate. So to make it animate, we need to use time, and we bring time into our shaders. We've done this in the past. I think a long time ago I showed you how we eventually added F time to our UBO transform. So now we know time. So time every frame, that value is updated, and it's based on the time. I guess it started using in milliseconds. So we take time. We multiply it by 1 second. Is it a constant? Yeah, here we go. Here's a constant, and it's just 1 second. But instead of me dividing by 1,000. So, because like I said, this is milliseconds. I want to bring this down to 1 second. So instead of dividing by 1,000, I multiply it by 0.001. So this way I don't have to do division. So I convert time from milliseconds to seconds, and then I say how much of that time I want the Y to move. So if I leave it as 1 second, this whole Y movement is going to happen once for every second. It's like 1 whole unit per second. So it's like 1 whole unit per second. It's really, really fast. So we want to kind of slow it down a little bit. So if we slow it down, we get a nice smoother motion. So we're going to go up at a decent pace, and we're going to the left a little bit, or to the right actually. We're going to just move it, shift it to the right, very also slowly, because you know flames can kind of go like if wind is blowing it, so the fires are going to go in that direction. And that's all we have to do, and we take the fraction of the time. So even though this value, like let's say this time equals like 1,000 seconds, right? So we divide it by that, so we know, bring it down to that. Let's say this is like a 100,000 milliseconds. So we divide that down to just seconds in general, and then we divide it by that too, and then we use frac. Frac gives us the fraction. So let's say if it's like 3.5 seconds, frac is only going to give us 0.5. So it kind of allows us to take these big numbers and bring them down, like it kind of like a cheat way to get a normalization. So this way we can get a value between 0 and 1, because we want to animate between 0 and 1. And that's what UV coordinates have to be, between 0 and 1. So this way is a nice, quick, easy way to create animations between 0 and 1 just using the frac values. It means it's short for fraction. Fraction also creates a saw wave. So if you ever want to use a saw wave for animation, frac again is another great tool to use, a great nice function to use. That's part of GLSL. So all right, we got animation going. So now we're back here. So we can play around with the shader now at this point. So if you want to like fix it up, or we can take this. All the channels are the same color because it's a grayscale. So every channel has the same value except for alpha, probably has a value of 1. So if you want, we can just play around with it. You can actually change your texture if you want to bring more black and more white, to put more holes into it. For this one, we're not going to bother, but I just want to show you that you can take. We're going to take a little detours here and there till we get to fire, because I just want to teach you guys like things you can do, things you can just add into to play around with. Because like I said, when I was doing this, I like to play around. So now that we're done animating, and we can see our texture and we can play around with it. Now we're going to apply distortion to it. So I have like 2 different types of distortion, even using the exact same texture. So what we can do is we're going to sample our distortion texture, and we can multiply it by strength to see how strong we want it. And I have it right here hard-coded as a constant as 0.2. So we're going to take distortion, but we're going to use a small value of it. And the way apparently, like I didn't understand how to use distortion until Minions Art did it, was basically you just take your distortion has to be done using some kind of smooth noise, like purlin noise. Okay? Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Throat's really dry. So, excuse me. So, the way you do distortion is that you need smooth noise. So you take smooth noise, right? This is our distortion value. It's this texture. It has some kind of noise factor. You can probably think it's like it could be this image again, for all we know, that's hidden inside. I'm just, you know what? I'm gonna do a detour that I didn't even plan for. What kind of? Let's do it. Let's see what kind of noise values exist in our distortion. Oh, I barely see it. It looks like it's smoke. Oh, you know what? Because I have the strength. Let me comment out the strength. So this way you can kind of see what's hidden inside of that. Refresh. There you go. So inside this image in the R channel is this noise texture. So that's the noise texture that we're applying as distortion. And let's see, is the other channel, because we're using 2 channels. So what does the other noise look like? Looks about the same. Probably slightly different. It's about the same type, but a little bit different. Like I guess a different frequency or a different step. So there you go. Quick little detour, but now you can kind of see that you can kind of see the noise that exists within these distortion textures, or noise textures technically, because they're just packed in. So now we know what the noise kind of looks like. So we take that noise value, we apply like a strength to it. So because we don't want to use the entire noise value, and then we just add to it with our UV value plus that distortion. And as you can see, I'm using RNG to create some distortion, and there you go. So we go from this texture to applying a bunch of distortion. We can do a bunch of things. We don't have to use both channels. We can probably just use one channel and click. Now you have distortion that kind of goes all in one direction. We probably use B, whatever exists in B channel. You know, you can. I don't know if anything exists in the A channel. Something does. It's like kind of waves back and forth. So yeah, I mean, let's check out. Let's see what is in D, because I'm starting to see something different. Sorry, I'm probably end up making this video long because I haven't bothered to actually see what's hidden inside those textures. There's no. Can't use strength. Refresh. It's white. Oh, okay. So there's nothing actually in the A channel. All right. I'm pretty sure there's something in the B channel, isn't there? We know there's something in A so it looks like all three channels have about the exact same thing, and alpha has no channel, has no data at all. So if you have no clue what's in there, I guess this is a nice way to find out how. All right. Ooh. All right. So we're back to where we came from. So there you go. That's pretty much it. And we don't need G, because we're going to use those two noises. There we go. So that's all we're doing, is really just doing that. Once we take that out, all we're just doing is animating. So we're just animating it and then kind of just shifting, adding an offset to the UV value, and then it's the magic thing is that it has to be smooth. If it's random, you end up making garbage. So it's that smoothness that would help a lot. Like let's say if I was going to use this itself as a distortion, kind of wobbles, doesn't do much. So it all depends on actually, because I don't. Yeah, that didn't work because I didn't load in that texture yet. So let me try. Let's give that a shot. Comment that out. And let's say we add, it's the same noise texture, but we're going to add noise texture as a distortion to itself. Click RG. And we crapped out. And why is that? Oh, because I did it twice. Oh, okay. You know what? Fine. X. Call it X. Refresh. Whoa, even there we go. That's different. Doesn't really add distortion to it, but like it doesn't animate the distortion though. That's really interesting. I like the texture that it creates though. It's kind of a neat texture that it creates. When you use the noise itself and you resample it as an offset to itself, that's pretty neat. Okay, that's cool. I was not expecting it, but that's actually really neat. I like that. All right, let's continue, because I'm sure you guys are like, come on, let's get to the fire already. All right, so here's our fire. And the distortion value comes in between 0 and 1. So you can play around with it. You can change it up. So if you want to do like a back and forth type of thing, we can remap it between -1 and 0, and you can get a different effect by doing distortions. So it seems a little bit more violent, the distortion, when you change the mapping of it. So yeah, just like I said, we're just remapping 0 from 1 to -1 to 1. So it's more of a back and forth motion that we're creating, because noise usually, like I said, noise has that, like Perlin noise, the functions we've been using has it goes between -1 and 1, and others I've tried actually just goes between 0 and 1. So it really depends on the noise function that you're using. So there you go. We got some simple distortion, and we're playing around with distortion a bit, so we're getting there. So the next step is that we need to, so now we have the distortion, right? Let's see, what do I need to uncomment? All right, I need to uncomment this one. Let's see. So we're going to create a gradient. So, and I think to see the gradient, I need this. So let me just refresh it. Ooh, that's not what I want. That's not what I was expecting. Is it this? Nope, not that either. Oh, you know what? I'm so not paying attention. That's right. Here it is. Because there's like a return function. Sorry to skip ahead. All right. So we have our moving texture. We applied distortion to it. Now the next step is a gradient. So that's the next step in Minions art. So it's easy to create a texture. We don't need to load in a texture. So we just take a 2, 0. We do a mix. So between because to create a texture, really, you just do between 0 and 1 and this. That's it. That's all you need to do to create a texture, a gradient texture. By adding 2, I end up doing some shifting. So I kind of shift the white up higher. So let me just unrefresh, go back. See, there's not a lot of white. So we need actually a lot of white at the bottom to kind of denote where the hot flame is going to be, like where the hotness is coming from. So it kind of ends up creating this kind of effect where this is where all the flame or all the heat's coming from, and then everything else kind of fades away. So we just double the value. So that makes a value that's more white. So when the gradient comes down to here, this is where it reaches 1. Then after this, by down here reaches 2. But we can't go over the value of 1, so that's why we always have constant white. So we're doubling how much white we want. And then the next thing is that maybe we want more white, but we want to shift the black down. So we can shift it. I think it was 0.45. Yeah. So now we're back to where it was. Like if I just show it to you, fresh, we're still good. So now we're going to shift Y. We're going to want to push the black down. So we just want to shift this special gradient right here down more. So if we just add 0.45, it shifts it down. So the white, the hard white's more at the very bottom. You can put it anywhere you want. You can have the flame more in the center, but I wanted the flame more closer to the bottom. So closer to the bottom. So everything past this line is greater than 1. Everything past this section is actually in the negatives. So that's what we end up doing. Should be in the negatives. No, actually, it's not negative. It's over. Should be. Yeah, they should be negative because I have like a little thing to make sure the testing where the negatives are. So that's it. So we have the gradient. So we're just repeating the distortion again. So we're gonna sample our distortion. We're gonna have 2 distortion samples. We have the two samples, D1 and T2, and then we're gonna apply. So we have this distorted texture, the distorted noise texture, and what we're gonna do is add the gradient to the distorted texture. So in case you don't remember what it looks like, let's do what it looks like again. So we're gonna have this, and we're gonna add that gradient we just created to it. and it does that. Remember, like I said, that the black section was negative, so it pushed everything toward the blacker area, and everything down here was in the positive area, and it pushed everything toward white. And that's why I say I kind of have an example of showing you where the negatives are. Refresh. So this red area is where the UV value is actually in the negatives. It's actually below 0. So that negative helps push that texture into black. So you need these things to help you debug and visualize. Especially when I had a lot of problems getting this to work. Even though I had some code samples for Unity, which is kind of hard to translate into regular GSSL. Yeah. But, you know, that's why I'm here. I'm here to do the hard work and then show you how I went about doing it. So, so as you can see, it doesn't take a lot. So if I take out the gradient, so we have this noise texture. We're animating it up. We're just applying this distortion to it. So we're reading the noise texture kind of in a random-ish place, like an ordered random place. So it creates this weird distortion. And then just by adding a gradient, like a special gradient that has negatives and positives, ends up creating this black and white flames. Beautiful. Look, this is great. This is amazing. And there we are. So we got flames going. So now we have flames, and we got flames and smoke. The last step in his or hers thing is really a color gradient. So a simple color gradient. I pick red. Oh no, actually this is yellow, and this is red, and I just use the Y value as a mixing value. So between down here is like 0, and up here is 1. So here should be yellow, up here should be red. And I'm just mixing it. So I mixed the two colors based on the Y position of the UV, and I just multiply it by this mask. Because this is a mask, so the mask can end up taking the colors we've taken. So if I click Save, refresh, now we got some really good looking flames. You know, this is more realistic looking flames. This is on fire, and like it doesn't take much. If you want, you can play with it. We can use that palette function from that dude. Click refresh. And now you got these weird gradient colors, the multiple colors coming in. You don't have to just mix one color. You can mix two colors. And here's another one from, you can have rainbow flames, like, whatever. Whatever floats your boat. All right. So we're almost done. We got flames, right? We got really realistic flames. We just blend two colors in together. We get some really cool stuff. But this one goes one step further. This doesn't create flames. This creates kind of like a toonish flame, a cartoony flames, right? So we need to make so we have realistic flames going on, but we need to make it cartoony. So to make it cartoony, let's see. I don't think we need this one anymore. Nope. So all right, so we're gonna take this mask, right, and we're going to step is like smooth step. Step basically says here's a number. Anything equal to or greater than becomes a value of 1. Because we never use step, we always use smooth step. So this is kind of a new one for you guys. If it's less than this value, it makes it 0. So it marks a spot like where we want to convert from one value to another. So since our noise value, everything is a mask, so everything is between a 0 and 1 for the most part. They are negatives and values over than 1 to create this white light and then this darkness. So we're gonna do a hard. So we're gonna say somewhere in between is the hard step. Anything less than 0.5 is automatically going to be 0. It's going to be black. Anything over that, it's going to automatically be white. So if I click save, refresh, now we created a very simple flat mask of the flames. All right. If we want, we can do smooth step and make it a little bit less pixelated. There you go. So it looks a little bit better, and still can still kind of keep that cartoony feel to it. Let's see. And then here's the last one, and this is a color ramp. If I refresh, and now it really makes it cartoony. Now, a color ramp. Color ramps are sometimes just textures that. Is there an image? I should probably look this up before. Color ramp texture. You know what? I should probably say tune. Tune. Close enough, I guess. Like this is kind of a color ramp, or this one. There's names for these, but these are basically this is what a color ramp is. So you have you can have a simple texture, or it's it's kind of like a very hard gradient of some type. So this is really what a color ramp is. Really, it's just a ramping of colors, like one from another. So if you're gonna deal this as a texture, like let's say the texture starts here at 0 and over here is 1. If we use this on a mask, we can say, well, between here and here, let's say how many there's 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so between 0 and 0.2 is going to be this pink color. Between 2 and 0.4 is going to be this. Between 4 and 6 is this. Between 6 and 8 is this. And between 8 and 1 is this. So that's what a color ramp is. It's basically defined between 0 and 1, the increments, and at which chunks of increments is a specific color. And that's what a color ramp is. So I have a function called getColorRamp, and let's see, I'm clamping the values between, because like remember, our values exist in the negatives and exist below 0 and above 1. So we need to clamp it between 0 and 1. All right, so that's the first thing we need to. We need to clamp that value. I don't know what this one is. I remember. I have to look at the function. So here's our getColorRamp. Okay. So what the color ramp does, it kind of just loops through these two arrays. And when it finds where that value belongs, oh, that's what it means. It means feathering. Okay. So the second value is about feathering. So I'm passing in a value, that clamp value that we did, and we're trying to find where in the ramp it exists. So here in the ramp, so we have the color anchors. So it's an anchor of where the colors exist. So you have 0, 5, and 6, 5. Those are my color ramps. So that means there's a color that exists between these two colors. There's a color that exists between these two values, and then there's another color that exists after. So between this 6 and 1 automatically. So if it's over, then it's going to be. So there's 3 colors in total. So if a color exists between these two colors, it's going to use black. If it exists between these two colors, it's going to use this color. And if it's greater than this value, it's going to use that. So this is a very simple, hard way to code a color ramp without getting a texture. So this way you can programmatically do this, any way you want. You can make an array of like 20 and make these crazy ramps. So the idea is you need to find the points between 0 and 1 and have the associated color within that range of points. And then all this function does is tries to find the point. So it checks to see anchor, let's say anchor 0, is the value between greater than or equal anchor 0 and less than anchor 1. So it's like I plus 1. And if it is, then we do a mixed color with it and we use a feather value. And that's really the gist of it. By by using a color ramp, it makes it very easy to turn things into cartoons. That's why we have this. That's why beforehand. Is it this I was using? No. What was it? I think it was this example. So I'll just kind of finally illustrate it. So like here, this is like a realistic flames, right? So so this is like, you consider this realistic shading. So if you have like a realistic shading and you apply a color ramp to it, you instantly can turn real-time shading into cartoon shading. So that's how toon shading actually works. You have to use a color ramp in place of actual colors, an actual transition between light and darkness. So you can. That's how I made this into a very toony thing by using a color ramp. He uses, I don't know what he uses, to be honest. Like I said, I had problems following his Unity shader. So, but like I said, I know a different way to make it into a cartoon. Into a cartoon is by using a color ramp. So that's how I approach it. I approach it a little bit differently. So you get a different way to go about it. Like he does something here, like it does a saturation to get the extra rim edge, and it might do something similar to what I'm doing, but this way I kind of have a lot more control to colors. So if I can actually add multiple ramps, different stages of colors. So it's not just 2 colors. I can stage it 3 or 4 colors. So yeah, if I click save, ramp, and you can always change the size of the flames. Like if I wanted to make the spacing between them like a little bit less cartoony or look a little thinner, I can just change the ramps a little bit. And now the edges. So this is how I'm finding edges. I'm using the color ramp as a way to define the edges. That's how I'm going about doing it. And so between these 2 points in the ramp, I'm defining that. So like I said, this way you can actually color the edges. You can change the edges any size you want. Like this to me was a pretty good size to get like a cartoony flame going. You can make it thicker if you want. Like I said, the sky's the limit really. How far you want to go. You can have like a forward flame and a backward flame, and you can do a lot of crazy things. You can like if you want the color ramp, you can fix your color ramp function. Instead of sticking to a solid color, you can say, well, blend in. You know what? I think that's what the feathering does. Kind of blends things in a little bit. It's how much you blend in. So let's say if I say feathering 3.5. Okay, so yeah, that's I wrote this function. I forget how it works. So yeah, that feathering function, it's how much you blend in between the 2 ramps. It's like how far to go. I guess for me to do a cartoony thing, this was a good value, 0.5. But you can make it slightly more realistic by changing the feathering, like the blending between ramps. So, and there you go. There you go. Cartoony flames, very similar to how he does it. He uses a different texture, like to get that flame. He uses like a different type of texture. It's something more in tune to this. Let's see. I think I tried to, but I think I couldn't get it to look just right. I can switch textures, and let's see what happens. What it looks like. Oh, there you go. So, oops. So I guess it's something similar, but his looks better. Maybe he had made the texture smaller because you can scale the texture. I'm not scaling the texture at all, but yeah, by using this noise instead of this as the starting point of our texture, we can overall change how it all looks. It's kind of like dissolving. I guess you can say this. This is probably more of a cartoony flame, I guess. And I like how the ramp creates the edging around the circles that come in. So that's kind of neat. And the last thing I did not do is it does not mention like the shape. And this guy actually tells you how to do the shaping of it. That's why I said both of them are really the. It's probably hard to tell. Oops. But the idea is that you have a different texture. There you go. That's probably called like a shape texture. So that's like a mask that you then use to apply at the end. So once you have, once I have the entire thing shaped, then I apply a mask over it and it ends up cutting it into the shape that I need it to be. And he has a little extra bonus that where you take the shape and you add a little bit of you use a little bit of noise, I guess, to make it wobble back and forth. So if you want to make the flame, shake back and forth a bit more. So it's pretty neat. Like I said, I couldn't find a good mask texture to use. It doesn't look too hard to make. It's a circle with some glow and a little blurring at the top, I guess. But like I said, it's at this point, once you get to this point, it's really easy to kind of add on to it. Like I said, just add a mask to it. Any shape you want. You can do a circle shape. I have a feeling that this is probably an oval by the looks of what this image looks like. It's an oval shape mask was used to create this. If you want to find out, like I said, pay this person $10 and you get the source files. Definitely, I'm gonna do that at some point when I start making my game. I'm gonna definitely get a lot of source files because you'd be amazed how many great, amazing effects this dude has. He's like I said, he's definitely worth the money. Definitely more than that, to be honest. I would pay for him to make a tutorial about making visual effects. In all honesty, that's me because I really wanted to be able to do this. I don't want to just copy people. I want to understand how to do it and build this stuff from scratch on my own. But it's all part of the learning process. You got to learn from other people, and eventually you have enough knowledge where you can start thinking it up by yourself. So yeah, that's the end of that. This probably was a long video. I'm not sure. So there you go. You got your cartoony flames. They're done. TD, TD, all done. Hope you had fun. This was to me something I've been wanting to do for a long time. This is actually probably I've been wanting to do Dragon Ball Z flames for a long time. So this example finally gave me an idea of how to go about it a little bit. Ooh, I totally screwed up somehow. Oh, there's no noise at all. So yeah, I can now kind of have an idea of how to do Dragon Ball flames. At least I know how to make flames in general, but like a power up thing where I have more. So it's basically I gotta find the right starting texture and things like that kind of creates that shape I'm looking for, or just create it myself. I've been thinking about how do I create the texture I want to create, like a Dragon Ball Z powering up aura. So, yeah, that's about it. I'm done. Oh, and in case you haven't noticed, why is that transparent? Because the last color in the ramp, or the first color in the ramp, it has an alpha of 0. So if I were to, you probably didn't I probably didn't explain why. If I change it back to 1, it's black. So yeah, if I start it up at 0, and now it's transparent, so you can kind of see right through the flames. A little bit alpha transparency. There you go. In case I forgot to mention that. And also I'm gonna show you that I can make you can change the flames. That made it taller. If you want, I can make it closer to the ground. There you go. By just changing that gradient value that we talked about. This looks kind of like this might be cool to put like on grass, so you can have a grass on fire. I don't know, like the ground's on fire, but there's grass. I don't know. Like I said, this makes the flames look a little bit more realistic, I guess, toony in a way. I don't know how to describe it. It just looks nice to me. It just needs shaping. That's about it. But yeah, there you go. Like I said, you can play around with it. You have source code, how to do it. I found the textures using Google image search. They probably belong to someone. I'm sorry. I own no rights to these textures. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you had fun. Like and subscribe. See you guys at the next video.